There's a decrease in lifespan that's associated with large population centers, whether it's Los Angeles or New York or living in urban areas. There's a decrease in lifespan. They think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years, and they don't know if it's because of brake dust or pollutants or particulates in the atmosphere. They don't know what it is. But has there been a study on? Well, I'm sure there probably hasn't, on sperm counts in rural areas as opposed to sperm counts in high population areas.
I actually did that study.
Oh, okay. Well, I shouldn't have been sure.
But the answer is not what you'd expect.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So in this study, we got 4 groups of people, and that turned out to be men and women, and I can tell you why. And they were, one of the centers was Columbia, Missouri, where I was living. And that's rural. It's agricultural. They grow a lot of corn and soy there. And one of them was Minneapolis, urban. And then there were some, I'm just going to talk about those 2. And in those 2 centers, we saw that men in Missouri had half as many moving sperm as men in Minneapolis.
Did they associate that with farm chemicals?
Yes. That's the next study I did. So then I took men with good semen quality and bad semen quality and measured how much of the pesticides were in their bodies, and there were significantly more pesticides in the sample of men who had poor semen quality as compared to good semen quality.
Now, is this because is it airborne? Is it like we were talking about enormous cornfields and glyphosate and all these other different chemicals, or they work their way into the air itself because they spray?
Or water.
Water.
Runoff from the fields
Right.
into the water,
and then
into
it
the
pollutes the
groundwater.
water supply.
Right. Or air. I didn't study how they were getting this, but they weren't workers. They weren't agricultural workers, and they weren't living on farms. They weren't
Right.
farmers.
Just regular
They're
folks.
just regular folks living in that area, including
Wow.
me. So that was pretty dramatic.
That is very dramatic.
Yeah.
I've driven past corn. I have a buddy of mine who lives in Iowa, and you drive down there and you see these enormous fields, like huge fields of corn, and I've always wondered, like, where's all that going? Like, for sure they're spraying this stuff.
And the workers who are spraying it and getting it on, they're even more highly exposed. And those studies of high exposure, here's an example. There was a pesticide that was used to grow pineapples. It was nematicide. It killed nematodes and dibromochloropropanone. And so there was a picnic, and the wives were talking, and we haven't gotten pregnant. We haven't either. Really? And gradually they did a study of these men who had 0 sperm.
Zero.
And then they banned DBCP, and in about, I think, 4 to 5 months, the men's sperm returned. So
Wow.
that's the thing about adult exposure. You can reverse it. So that's kind of the good news, that you can reverse it.
The only good news all day. Wow. But I don't understand. I mean, I don't know. When you talk about monocrop agriculture on large scale, like these enormous cornfields, I don't know how they do that without pesticides.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, but I hope there's a way. And I think there are people that are working on that, regenerative farming and so on. I don't know.
The thing about regenerative farming, though, they don't do monocrop agriculture.
That's
like
true.
That. The
That's
whole
true.
idea of regenerative farming is that you try to mimic nature.
Right.
The cows eat the grass, they poop,
Right.
the poop becomes the fertilizer,
Right.
the fertilizer
Right.
helps the plants. This is not what you see when you have these enormous cornfields.
So maybe those enormous cornfields are not good for us.
They're not good for us.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say. They're not good for us. It's just not, it's not a natural scene. Like when you see the amount of manipulation that's required to grow 1,000 acres of corn or whatever in one spot, like that's not, you don't see that anywhere in nature.
Right. Or 1,000 cows in a...
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
A small enclosure. Yeah, it's, whew, we're so strange. human beings are so strange. Like what we've done to the environment in such a short time. That what's crazy to me is if you go back to 1820, 200 years ago, there's none of this.
Yeah.
There's none.
Right.
Zero. So in 200 years, we've completely ruined the ground. We've completely changed the way we cultivate food. We've added all these chemicals to our environment, to our water, to our air, changed sperm counts, changed reproductive cycles and reproductive quantity. It's very strange.
I would say post-war is where it really took off.
Post-World War II, when the use of plastics increased. Yeah. Well, what's terrifying to me is like, if we can have that significant a change in 200 years, what's possible in another 200 years? And is all this happening exponentially, which it probably is?
The declines that we see in miscarriage and fertility and sperm count and so on are not exponential. They're linear. But the growth of the plastics industry is exponential.
How come the exposure isn't exponential if the growth?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. Maybe it isn't exponential. Maybe I misspoke. It seems to be faster than linear, though. Yeah, it's.